Hey, all right. Let's see how we're doing here. Let's see if I still got sound on the YouTubes. Not bad. Not bad for doing so. Good morning. Good morning. It is Tuesday, February 4th, 2025, and we're going to do a little bit of a show today. Going to spend some more time talking about models, talking about some of the things that I learned since last show we did on Friday, and maybe talk about a couple of other things related to some of the work over there on the GitHub models. And yeah, just spend an hour writing some code, having some fun, seeing what we can learn about this new set of tools that, as developers, something we all should get some experience trying out and playing around. And if you weren't here last time and didn't hear us talk about GitHub models, it's a free way for you to learn how to work with and start to, try out some ideas using large language models, small language models, the frontier models, as they call them, basically having that ability to put some intelligence inside of your application. So I'm kind of kicking things off here. Chris is going to join me shortly, spinning up my dev box, getting that rolling so that we can try some things out. That was a shocker. One of these times I am going to do a short, and we have a list of shorts. No shortage of shorts, but always a bit of a delay in getting things timed out, or time to find out to do those things. So I have this monitor that is I think it's 34 inches wide. It is a Samsung ultra wide, and love it because it's huge real estate. I basically have one monitor sitting in front of me. It's not curved, it's flat. So for the most part, I do have to duck occasionally around to get in front of something, but I love this monitor. And I've been playing around, not playing, for the last 6 months or so. I've been using what's called Fancy Zones, which is another one of those power tools. And it helps me do essentially a layout in my screen here. And what's really cool is that I have almost like a side for my Teams and my email, but I have my main section here, which is taken up by a couple different zones because you can overlap things. But essentially, what I have is one zone defined for 1920 by 1080, and that's where I put whatever it is that we're going to show here on the screen. So with that, I'm going to do oh great, yeah, WinDD just collapsed everything. That's not what we want. Let's bring this back up so I can see what's going on, and this one up so I can see what's happening over there. Cool. All right. Let's see. Chris should be joining shortly. One of those, sometimes it's tough for us both to be here right at 8 o'clock, and we'd rather start the show with one of us than have, the other, and then the other join a few minutes later, as opposed to not do a show at all. So that's kind of how we approach it. So, clean this up a second. Let's see. What's this? That's fine. I can get rid of that for now. Just trying to clean up my desktop here. I'll save that for when Chris gets here, because this is something very rare for me. This is my second cup of coffee. I don't usually do 2 cups, but it has been a long night. So we'll keep that there and help us get through the show, and then hopefully have enough kicked in that I can go right into my customer call as well, which I have after this. So, all right, let's get a screen shared. I don't really want to show that project. Let's get rid of that project, and let's bring up maybe the project we were working on before. There we go. All right. Close that. Yeah, That all looks kind of good. I can get rid of that and bring this up. Awesome. Window. This one. Excellent. Nice how that just puts things in the right spots. Okay. All right. Welcome all. So I'm going to do a little bit of preamble while I wait for Chris to get here because he did say he was coming. So where we're going to github.com/models. And that takes us here to essentially this playground area. I could very quickly go ahead and select the model. And let's say I want to just do something with Azure OpenAI O1s. O1s. Actually, the O3s are on here as well. So this is the next version of those reasoning models that the O1s were, that the DeepSeek R1 is, DeepSeek R1 is as well. But essentially, this is something where we can ask, interesting kind of questions, a lot of things. So let's try and do something like that. I think last time we asked Bake Bread, can you help me create a taco recipe? Let's see. While we're waiting, so one of the cool things about this tool and Azure AI Foundry, which is another tool that we'll be looking at some point over the course of these sessions, is something that it has here on the right hand side, in that telling information about the model. So we brought up O3 Mini. It includes the features of O1 with significant cost efficiencies, which is awesome. But again, this is all free right now. So what's interesting here, let me see if my, do I have zoom in? Yep, it's in the tray. And that's gotta be because it's not full screen. I'm pretty sure that's the reason. Let's see. Yeah, that's a little terrible. Okay, so one of the things that it does have is context. So what is the context that we're providing here? So two things to think about. One is, what are we inputting into the context? So you probably hear when you talk about these large language models, talk about grounding and being able to provide context for how they give their response. So you have a large number of tokens, 200,000, which is quite a lot, to be able to give to the models to let them go ahead and be able to provide their response to. And then on the outside, or on the output, you have 100,000 up to 100,000 output back. Now you can configure that obviously with what you put into what you send, but you can also configure what comes back by setting, well, only send me 1,000 token response as opposed to 100,000 token, because that may be too large for what you're looking to do. That also will probably take a large time to kind of craft and have the model come back with, essentially. So so those are some things that you can do to kind of shape the input and output. This one does not say when they last, when the training date was from. We can look at some of the other models to see how that is different. We're in a custom rate tier, and we'll click on that and see what that means in a second. And then we can go over to the Azure support site when we think about some of the support stuff. So let's take a look at that custom real quick. So we go here. So this talks about some of the rate limits that are there when we look at prototyping with the models. So being able to, the important part here, playground and free API usage, but it's limited or rate limited, which typically when you have a free API, there is some kind of rate limit that goes along with that, where it gives you only a certain amount of access or capabilities or whatever that value is that you're pulling back. So in this case, it is requests per minute is how they're using it. So and that varies depending on what instance of Copilot you're bringing to the table. So if you have Copilot free, there's this column of information. If you've got a pro version, which means you're, kind of an individual, I believe that's an individual with, I think I'm gonna have to check that, but I believe that is an individual Copilot license as opposed to Copilot Business or Copilot for Enterprise, which are more the SKUs that an organization would pull together, and because they include many more features than just accessing the GitHub models. So since there is a Copilot free tier, and that's, I believe that's what we're using here, these are some of the limits around that for various models, essentially. So, yes, and I'm guessing, given the way that is, it's probably using, yeah, because it's using my GitHub account, which doesn't have, it's not a free tier account, so that's why the values would be a little bit different. But this is where you can come and check and see what are those limits essentially. Mentioned a little bit about the parameters. When we think about, here's that 100,000 token. I probably don't want a response that high, so let's drop it down to maybe, yeah. Why do a slider when I can just type in the numbers myself, right? And then reasoning efforts. So this being one of the reasoning models, how much reasoning are we putting into the process essentially. So a little bit, it was kind of interesting in compare and can compare. Let's bring that up and let's compare it with what we were looking at last week in the DeepSeek model. So in this case, it's going to want give me a side-by-side, but I can enter this once and it can provide a response. Can you provide a taco recipe? So it's a bit of a difference in the way they respond. Right, we're looking at the 003 model, and it took a little bit of time, it paused, and then boom, it kind of shot all of this information out to you. In this case, the DeepSeek is providing a little bit more information. You can see there where the output is going. Is providing a little more, I don't want to say thought, but kind of an iteration around what that might mean. Thinking about things like make sure the instructions are clear and in order, maybe some taco seasonings, included, talking about spicing, cooking time. All of these things are pieces that in the end will make sure is part of the response. So in this case, where we've got some ingredients, we've got for the serving, and then we've got the actual instructions. And you can see they're a little different, actually grouped kind of nicely instead of it just being a set of instructions, cook the filling, season the beef, warm the tortilla, right? Each one of those being different sections inside of there. So let's see. Okay. Do we finish? Looks like we finished because our output and everything is all right there. So input 1111. So I put essentially 11 tokens in with that little phrase that I have here. And again, a token is like a 3 to 4 characters roughly. And if we were to take this and go ahead and bring it over to token counter, should be a good one out here. Let's see. It's interesting. I never know which one of these to use. I thought we had one as part of one of the services. Nope, those are GitHub projects. I wonder if I can. Let's do this. Let's see if we can we can probably copy that. It's like, that's cool. So maybe say, now we'll leave that where it is. Okay, maybe just do a well, that's kind of redundant because it already told us it's 11. But there are token counters that can kind of show you how that breaks up and how that word essentially parses out. So kind of pausing a little bit because it's a little longer than I thought for Chris being here, because I want to get started. Maybe what I will do is let's do this. I'll keep that in the back burner just in case. We'll give him a couple more minutes. So what we did last time was we got to the point of, we kind of did some side-by-side stuff, which is pretty good. Doing a little bit of a rehash here because I ended up doing some work and cleaning some content up. So let's get rid of this one. We've got our DeepSeek, right? So that's taco recipe still. There's a code section here, and the code section basically gives you an appropriate output or appropriate code to bring back into your project. So I'm going to do this because I like writing in C#. So there is running this model in C#, and there's some components here that we get back that we should be able to, because we essentially have down here console.writeLine. We should be able to take this, drop it into a console app. And if we go over here, I think it's already up and running. There we go. That's our console app. So hidden is our GitHub token. So in order to be able to, even though it's, there's no cost with talking to the models, you still need some kind of a token to securely access the endpoints, right? They're not completely open and available for anybody to hit. So in here's my GitHub token, which I requested. So I asked it. Nice. So Chris should be here soon. He's doing what always happens when you're trying to get on the stream quickly or start things. He's got to reboot his PC. No worries, Chris. Well, hopefully you're listening in, because this is what we're going to be talking about when you get you to join us here. But so that code that I took from here was a little bit different. So we're using the Azure inferences. That's fine. We can talk about using other SDKs that can help talk to the LLM services. I've got a credential here. In this case, that's where I've added my GitHub token. That's awesome. That works. But it's this part here is a little challenging. So I'm going to copy just this section and bring it over into my code. So this is the one. If we come down here, hey, this works, right? But let's take a look at this one here. What was provided? If I paste that in, you see I immediately get some red squiggles. Let me bring this in a little bit and close this up because we don't really need anything on the project side. But you can see here we get some issue, and it's like, well, the type of the namespace chat completions client options could not be found. Well, that's interesting. So is there something that we didn't include? Doesn't seem to be anywhere in our project. If I do, kind of a little bit of, hey, fix using Copilot, let's see what Copilot says. Doesn't exist. You should use, okay. So this one's good because I don't remember it prompting me to that. So in this case, it's saying, hey, you should use the Azure AI inference client options instead. Now, could it be getting that because it pulled that from this section down here? Possibly. But what is also interesting is if we go here and look at, just do, what was that, Control-Shift-Space. Yeah, I have to get Carmack on here. So Control-Shift-Space, that brings up this little window, but you can see as we roll through it, so yeah, I always do this backwards. Credential, what it's looking for is an endpoint, which we have, Models, Inference, AI, Azure, a credential, which we also have, but also a set of options. And those options are not the chat completions client options, but an Azure AI Inference client options. That's what it's looking for. So because of that, it's a little, it doesn't have, it has the wrong signature essentially. And even if we were to, I think I tried some other things that were trying to essentially convert it to that. It essentially was not working well. So what happened was it just basically included that in there. Now I have tried this with and without. Oh shoot, not that. Let's see. I do this, so it can take a version, and that's the version of the API that we're talking to, so the AI service API, and that is one of the, if we go into, we just go into here, there actually is a service version enum that's part of this partial class that we get access to. So we could basically put in this. Now, I've done it, when I first did it did it with this, and I thought, hey, that's why we were running into some issues at the end of the last stream, and it made it work. But turns out it works without it as well. So I'm going to leave that where that is. The other thing we ran into was this down here, in that our response, and that's fine, we got a response with the object or typed to something called chat completions. And what we ended up with underneath that, if you look at the original, is that we get the system console write line, but it's looking at the response.value.choices. Let me get rid of those, because .choices.message.content. And if you actually look at the responses, and you'll see this when we debug, there is no choices. It's content is what you get access to, and that is essentially where the message or the response from the large language model is essentially. So, so with that, I can go ahead and run this. Let's go into the debugger. Let's hit that. Okay, cool. It cleared it for us. It's going to take a few seconds for it to run.
Yeah, while it runs, I guess. Good morning. I've been here
hey.
Noticing the code changes that I remember last time, and you've already said this, that last time this didn't run as is.
Yeah, which is, for someone new to anything, to me, that is the most frustrating thing.
Yeah.
When you go and it says, well, this is what the code says, or this is the steps I should take. It's super frustrating for someone who's new to it. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to come back and finish up and say, okay, these are the things we changed, right? That line, what was line 16, and the response at the whatever that last line was. So here we are. We've got a pause because of the breakpoint we hit. The question that was asked was to provide some. Let me get the right question here. Can you explain the basics of machine learning? So this is where it's thinking about it, and then you can see the thought process of what it's essentially going through there. Kind of, first I should mention some of the three main types: supervised, unsupervised, and reinforcement. Not bad. And then kind of breaking into each of those, it looks like. But a very detailed process of getting to, what is essentially this part here, which is outside of its quote unquote thinking. Because remember, there's not really a thinking going on. It's a probability of, what the right next word is. And I'm sure there is some taking what is part of that thinking and almost having a conversation with itself and having it give some history for what that next bit of thought process should be, right? But then coming up with essentially this section here that is in all markdown type, so it's very easily displayable on a web page, which is nice, or in some kind of markdown. And yeah, so we get some interesting results there. So But we can also take a look at here, which is the response object. Let me just move this out of the way. That's not what I wanted. Close. There we go. All right. So we look at this. We do get a value object, which is what we thought. It's typed to the chat completions. And then inside the chat completions, we get content. But we don't really have anything that was a choice. And it might be a choice might come from some other objects as opposed to chat completions. But in this case, chat completions doesn't give us that, so we just basically grab the content. Now there is a way to stream this and not wait for the end. And there is actually, we can try this. So if we go to, so I'll pause there. Chris, if you got questions, let me know.
No, I think we were headed down this path last time of, I just think the SDK has been updated or something has happened.
Yeah.
And once you just worked around that, then here, you got your answer. But to your point, the answer comes, it doesn't come in the way we're used to using. If you use like a lot of these models in online, is it comes streamed at you. So
yeah,
if that's what you were going to show, that would be really cool.
Yeah,
I didn't know
we're
if you were
going to
going
try that out.
Okay.
Yep. So I will say it's interesting because the code that's here, C# AI reference SDK, it doesn't matter what model you bring in. So if I bring in, it's the same, although that looked like it jumped out a little bit. Oh, because so the only thing that seems to be different in any of these is this section here. In this case, because you can always swap out the model. In this case, they want to include temperature, which is a measure of how creative the model can be. So the higher the number, the more creative it is. The lower the number, the more it sticks to the facts and the context that you provide.
Right. So there might be different chat completion options that, and here, this is the thing, is chat completion options, I suppose, is trying to be somewhat generic across all of these models. But perhaps for DeepSeek, and I don't know this, I'm just saying, perhaps temperature is kind of meaningless. But for the one you just chose, Meta Llama, it's like, that has meaning here. So let's put it in the example.
Yeah. Yeah, and especially when you look at the parameters, right? So anything that's over here in the parameters, you would expect to have the option to essentially include inside of the chat completion. So if we go back and roll to DeepSeek again, and look at the only parameter you get, it's the max tokens, right? And that's, the maximum response that it's going to provide to you. So two things to be aware of: line 16, and then whatever this console.writeLine is, those are where the two changes are. And it's kind of self-evident what should be used when you pop that in, because it tells you what method or what class belongs here, because it's not this one. But I think part of what we want to do is get this updated as well, or at least put, how might we update this, right? And there is a give feedback button. So let me just bring that up in another window, and that basically is the community models. They're using one of the features in GitHub, which is discussions, and then in this case, it's filtered for the category of models essentially. So this is a place where we could go ahead and do a new discussion and describe the problem we ran into and be able to get that hopefully on the roadmap to get it fixed. I'll put a pin in that in case you want to come back to that, because I know we did talk about, hey, that'd be fun to do. But where I'm looking for, and I know it was in my, I should probably, if it doesn't pop up here quick.
What is it you're looking for? I'm just curious.
So they were using GitHub models and they streamed the DeepSeek response. So give me a second here. Now the question is remembering where I saw it. What browser was I in?
Well, let's see.
I could probably let's see. Let's see how good our searching is. So if we look for dev blogs, DeepSeek, streaming, and I believe it was Matt. Yeah, that's the one. There's Matt. Okay. So he's doing the Let's Chat.
Yeah. Okay, I see. Yeah, okay. Because I actually was looking up. You get a lot of results back for using. In fact, there's like I got results back for a DeepSeek.net client and so on, and then, but this one, I see where it's saying here is get a streaming response back. Okay. Here,
Yep.
while you're doing that, I'm
So
gonna add that into our notes here on the
cool.
on the
And I'm just
YouTube
gonna
side.
copy this and see how this is gonna run when I go ahead and put this back in our chat. So let's stop this. Let's get rid of the window. And then what should happen? So we need the chat completion options. Don't need to see this right now, so I'll get rid of that. And I think where we are is kind of right here. I'll have to get rid of the line above, but if I paste that in, yes. So we're taking our client that we have, and what we're going to do is instead of calling client complete, we're going to interesting. I wonder because there's no question, and that's why that's failing. Okay, what and it's request options complete. So what if we did this? Let's undo that, and then complete streaming async. Cool. What does that take? It's awaitable. Takes a chat completion options, which is what we have with the request options. So why the red squiggle is probably because of the await. Maybe. Cannot implicitly convert type inference streaming response to Azure response. Okay. So then maybe we.
So what's interesting is so he varred it because it looks like there's an iChat client interface.
For what he instantiated, right?
Yes.
And I think that
it's a new chat completions client, which is what you have, right? New chat completions client. So what's the problem though is that I wonder, are you getting back the interface there when you say var, when you use var there on line 23?
On 23.
Yeah, so on line 23, my guess is you're getting the class, and yet the complete streaming async. Although, I mean, if the class implements the interface, you'd think you'd be okay, but.
So you're saying I should be doing this?
I don't know that for sure. We're just trying to figure out very quickly why, Of course, it's not complaining anymore, right?
When I did the other bit, no. Chat completions client. Oh, it does not exist. Use class. Nah, it's fine. Okay. It doesn't like it. So maybe. Is there something else in here? Why the?
Oh, this uses the Microsoft Extensions AI, Azure AI inference package to connect to the GitHub model surface. Huh.
Which is another way of accessing.
Right.
Essentially accessing LLMs. Interesting. MEA. Yeah, MEAI. There you go. So
I didn't pay attention as to whether I didn't notice when you first tried to copy in that code what its complaint was specifically.
Yeah. So the original complaint was the response here, the way we had it, which was, sorry, it was response of type chat completion.
Oh, okay.
It didn't like that because that is a responses type. It's Azure.response, so it's what comes back. It comes back from the
Oh, well,
Azure
now,
SDK.
okay.
Go ahead.
Now you didn't declare that as response, right? So maybe just typing, maybe that's it.
So, but then that gets here, which says I can't I can't implicitly convert it. I would have to do some kind of a
Yeah,
maybe a cast or some kind of a to
right.
something.
But
if
now
there's
when
that
you
field.
varred it, it seemed to when you did nothing other than var it,
Yeah,
most of the red went away because it
yeah,
certainly gave you a different type.
exactly. Because now the type when we hover over the var, the type is now AI
Streaming
inference dot
response.
streaming response.
Okay. And that means that what's on line 45 isn't valid anymore because you're not blocking waiting for the content to
Yeah.
complete. Okay.
Yep. So this can be copied, right? Because we're doing all that based on this for each loop essentially.
Right.
So there's that. So the other thing, so we can run this the way this is, I believe. So why don't we try that? And then
Okay.
what I'd like to do is when this comes back, after this comes back, hopefully it works. If it doesn't and it fails, then what I'd like to do is, whoa.
Okay.
That
So
looks like it's not cast
yes,
the right way.
right. You got answers, but they're not converted to string.
So the question then is, what is item?
Yeah. I mean, you could even just breakpoint on it and we could find out what we want to spit out of there. I don't know that maybe we'll figure it out
Yeah.
quickly.
There's content update. So we can do this and maybe go to the next time that comes back around and see what our content update is. Yeah, so content update seems to be with the string that we want to include there. Does that sound, I mean, I don't see anything else that looks like it might be a possibility. All right, let me try that. So let's stop. Let's do item dot content update and rerun. Now, take the breakpoint off. Oh, yeah, the breakpoint might have. Let's rerun that. Okay. Huh. Well, that's interesting. Wonder if I had a token limit. Although I would have expected it to run through and just get to the end. like that. All right, so that, although it looked like there was stuff in there, that may not be the, it looks like it's not the right object. Interesting. Hmm. I'm not sure. Okay. Let's see. Let's close that. Get rid of, nope. Stop that.
It's interesting because in this example, it's just a console.write item. I just wonder, gosh, is it important? Huh.
Maybe we should be
Is it
looking at the
important to
response.
use the package and interface that Matt is using? I don't know.
Well, that was going to be the next step, right? I was going to try this and see if can we get it working kind of the way we were going down. I mean, the other option is to look at this and bring in the Microsoft Extensions AI package and then do the same thing with the iChat client. And then that should get us working, I would think. You are thinking. Maybe so.
No, I'm just looking at the code, really. One thing that's interesting, although I don't know if it matters at all, is when when it initializes the chat completions client in the blog, if you scroll further over to the right, and that's line, it's part 3 in the list of directions.
Let's say this here.
Yeah, so scroll a little further over. There's this little guy at the end, as chat client.
Yep.
And we don't have
what
that,
we don't.
That's probably, I mean, those are the extensions on the chat completions client for sure.
Yeah. And that chat completion client, my guess is that is a different chat completion client, because it's probably not using, I mean, if you brought in, my guess would be, and we don't see the whole, oh, well, there's this here, which I guess is the whole app.
Right. I mean, I suppose we could take a quick peek at it, right?
Yeah. So it is using Azure AI and the AI inference, but it's also including the extensions AI. We can't tell here, but I'm guessing that chat completions client is the same chat completions client that comes from Azure AI inference, as opposed to being something that's part of the extensions AI. So what it looks like is all we need to do is add that package, which we're installing, and make that a chat client, because the chat client doesn't exist in what we currently have. And swap that. Let's try it. Okay.
If we dug in, we might see maybe a difference in what item means in that response, where we're getting back an object that it seems we have to tear apart, which is not a bad thing, but maybe the extensions, I don't know. You know, we're not looking at the code, so for that package. So
yeah. Well, I mean, we can, right? I mean, we got plenty of time. We got like 15 minutes at least. So before we bring that one in, what we could do is let's keep this at item. Let's rerun it with the breakpoint again. And then instead of just looking at the item and trying to figure out what it is, let's take a look at the response and see what we might want to see if there's something in here, although it doesn't look like there is. There's a raw response. A content stream, binary data of content. Okay. Interesting. Okay. What if we did this? If I did a watch? Did you disappear?
No, I just turned my camera off briefly.
Ah. So exception has occurred. Oh, I guess it gave up waiting. That's interesting. Okay. All right. Yeah. I mean, it kind of makes sense if you're going to stream this, you should have something that has the ability to understand and process that stream. It's funny. It's almost by maybe we it's almost like we lose the thread by not by hitting the breakpoint. So let's do this.
So, right, you're in the middle of doing. Okay, so we exited.
Yeah, because there was nothing coming back.
Okay.
Right, as chat client, which I think is what he had on his when we were
Yeah, and
looking
it
at
takes the model name, I think.
model name. Okay. But that's
Yeah, so this as chat client takes a model name, which is just DeepSeek -R1 for some reason. And again, I don't.
which is what's here.
Right. Right. So the reality is that there's some interesting. I mean, you could you're not really using request options anymore, I think.
Yeah.
Right? Which I wonder if that's redundant. That, in other words, chat completions options before was getting dropped in. I don't remember what we were doing with it now. I'd have to go look because, unfortunately, I have to go look at the old code, older code.
This code. This code?
Yeah, so chat completion, I see what it is chat completions client is getting a new chat completions client options. So I actually am not, I wonder if this is redundant just because the blog post doesn't use chat completions options. It just doesn't use it. So,
well, and same in the code here we're looking at from the repo.
right. However, if we just want to see it work, we could always fine tune it.
Yeah. I mean, so
because their particular way of doing it just new chat completions client takes the model endpoint, which you've got in there as you're just basically, instead of making it a separate line of code, you've just got it in place. Then the Azure key credential, which again, that's already been taken care of. And then as chat client, which takes the model name. And I just don't know for sure if it does. Now it's not happy, or why?
Why is it not happy? It's saying it doesn't take a definition of that. Just double check this.
So wait, argument 1 cannot convert
AI chat completions options to system generic list. Oh, wait a minute. Is that? Can I convert from?
Well, that's that problem. The first problem is it just says as chat client doesn't exist, which
is the important one we got to figure out. Maybe this isn't. Maybe I'm new. Chat completions client, which has a new URI for the first one. I mean, that looks like the right order of things. Right? I mean, I'm not. If I go here, I mean, if I take this as is.
We have, I mean, I suppose the using statement's not complaining because we have the package installed.
Right. But I should be able to do this now that we have those pieces there. That doesn't like model endpoint.
Well, model endpoint is just another thing was set up, and you could just copy it straight from his if you wanted.
Oh, okay. There we go.
That's not it. Believe it. That's
not it. Yeah.
No. Yeah, it's the GitHub Models one.
Cool. But still this.
Now, if you scroll up a little bit, you don't want to open the GitHub token for sure.
Yeah.
But you haven't included another using statement, which may be the problem. The second using statement, which I don't remember what it was.
Configuration?
Yeah,
which
I just wonder. Oh, we're not using configuration.
Yeah, we just basically threw them in the
I'm just trying to figure out where does as chat client comes from, and like if you look at just even quick fix, what does it think? It didn't say.
That's not helping.
Yeah, so I just don't know where as chat client comes from. That's the thing. I don't know if it's. I'd have to go find that library.
So it's got to come from extensions because that's where this is coming from. So we should be able to hopefully. All right, that's probably that. So complete streaming async, get service. Okay, so this doesn't. All right, right? I should be able to take this whole thing and bring it in, and it should run because it's just a program. It's not referencing anything else. Right?
Sure.
Although you do got to bring. I don't have the. We'll take it. We'll. How are we doing on time? Darn it.
Well, you can probably leave your region in place just for the moment. Don't copy over that.
Yeah, agreed. All right, so let's do from here all the way down. All right. Sufficiently keep it away from there. Sorry?
Brought it and commented. Was that okay?
So I don't need any of those because we have those three usings up top. We're not doing the configuration builder, so I'm getting rid of that. And we're not doing build configuration because that's all related to the configuration builder. We don't need this because we've already got it covered up above. And that's fine. That's what we did before with the credential. Yeah, we did the new Azure credential GitHub token, right? So that's the same.
Yeah, it doesn't know what token is right now.
Oh, well, this is, sorry, good point. It's that.
Okay.
And it still doesn't like this.
Well, up at the top, did we change out? What's up at the top? Are we matching? Oh, I guess not.
Except for the configuration.
Yeah. I was looking in the project package to try to figure out where the as chat client lives, and it's kind of hard to figure out.
Well, I mean,
I mean,
Okay,
you're
so
right. It
chat
should be
completions.
Microsoft Extensions AI, but I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm
because
not
this is
sure
so
if
the chat completions client, at least this one, is under the AI inference, and maybe it's the wrong one. Yeah. I mean, can there be another one under extensions AI? Doesn't look
I'm
like
just
it.
looking at the CS proj file to see what was brought in. Microsoft Extensions AI, Azure AI Inference. That was all that was brought in. And we have that in our CS proj, right?
I'm sorry, which one? AI inference?
Microsoft.extensions.ai.azure AI Inference is in our CS proj. I mean, I guess, because otherwise you'd think the using statement wouldn't work.
Yeah.
But I'm just looking at his CS proj and trying to compare, like, what's the difference?
We could bring it in.
No, I'm just looking at the CS proj file, not anything other than that. Like,
Right.
not the C# file, but
This one.
yeah, I just don't know. I imagine ours looks like that, but I don't. Just trying to figure
No?
out what's not the same. I don't know.
No, that's a good point. Let's do that. Do this. Terminal. And no, that might be something different then. Yep, that took care of it. So it's not just AI. It's well, actually, it wouldn't even based on what you have there in the CS proj. It would.
Yeah, like what does ours
Although
look like
probably
at this point? I'm just curious.
what
Our CS
does
proj.
our CS proj, right?
Okay.
So we could probably pull that out.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember if that depends on extensions AI, then the build system brings that in automatically. I don't remember for sure now.
Yeah, that's. I mean, it must because if you look at the reference, it's the
Right. Like you can take away
reference in
all
the
those
code.
references, I suppose, and you're good. So, okay. Well, let's see.
Yeah, that's fine. We don't need to be there. That's cool. Go for it. Argument is white space.
What
Huh.
line are we on? Do we know?
On the await.
I wonder if the item was just our white space.
Yeah. Let's do it without debugging. No, same thing. Huh. Well, that's unfortunate.
So,
I mean, that is the app, right? Although,
well, so it turns out the number one issue on Matt's repo is exactly what you've run into. In fact, there's only one issue. And
and it is this, right?
yeah, what another gentleman did is said he just took the async out, went back to waiting synchronously, and it worked.
But that's what we had before.
Yeah, exactly. And so,
That's funny.
so what's interesting is that this was 18 hours ago. And I mean, you can see it yourself if you want to bring it up real quick.
Yeah.
Just hit the number one. I mean, that's it. There's one issue. It's very well documented because it's exactly like you recognize immediately, like, yep, that's it. And then you can see the conversation. And essentially the conversation was, I switched it back to synchronous and it worked. And then Matt says, okay, that's odd. And suggested a change. But the gentleman, at least I believe, just based on the picture, I don't know, could be wrong, but Asha Habab, I'm not sure. You know, usernames are all sorts of things these days. Something on GitHub side where I've reached the rate limit, which is an interesting.
Right.
Now,
That's pretty
how
wild. Go ahead.
do you when you're working with this stuff, how do these rate limits work? Like, is it just a matter of trying something twice in a row could be an issue, or?
It shouldn't be it depends. So, all right, good point. Let's do this. If we go back to here and the details, there is the rate limit tier. And then this section here.
Oh, I see. Requests per day, requests per
Right.
minute. I don't. I mean, maybe it's just me, but I feel like it would be a different exception. I guess it doesn't have to be.
It should say. I mean, they're probably saying, okay, look at the. I mean, typically when you run into a limit in the Azure OpenAI service, you get I think it's a 429.
Yeah, right. Like it even says there, if you get rate limited, you'll need to wait for the rate limit that you hit to reset. Blah blah blah. My only take is that, like, would it be a different exception?
I think it would be. I think you would get a response, and that response would be, we're not checking the response code, but it would be a different response code coming back. Yeah. So I just got, some comments there, and I will just bring up this one because there's, a bit of I'll be honest, I don't know yet at this point if that white space response is because we're getting a busy response from DeepSeek. And I think that's what Chris and I were just chatting about. Is the expectation would be something come back that your code can then handle to be able to time out, do almost like a little mini retry after an extended pause. So yeah, I don't think the white space is us hitting a rate limit, but us basically getting something else that's, something else that we weren't expecting. I don't think I don't think that's the rate limit.
Yeah, it kind of makes you wonder if there's something we could handle there.
Yeah.
Right. Like in fact, that's the very next thing that YZZ says. So.
Yeah. I mean, if we do it's here. So we would almost want to, does this work? No. I never remember what the keyboard shortcut is. It used to be Control K, Control S, but basically, try.
Well, it's trying to help you.
Well, it did. That was the
yeah.
That was actually the VS Code bit. So I get Alt up this, tab it in,
and then we want to catch that specific one. I can't remember what it was now.
It was an argument exception, right?
Right. I mean, I suppose we could just sit on it, just since we're, of course you'd want to double check that it's what you're expecting.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. Considering it's 9:12, if you want to.
Oh, yeah, I got a customer at 9:30. All right, so I will probably wind up doing what we did last time. So for Friday we ended, we were in a similar kind of error debugging kind of scenario, and then over the weekend had some time to look at it. So before the next show, we'll go ahead and figure out what the issue is here, or at least have some way of running it asynchronously. So yeah, that's what happens when you only code for an hour, unlike others who code for 4, 5, and 6 hours. And you can kind of work through these issues a little more when you have that kind of time to do.
Yeah. All right. Well, so we learned a little about, and I don't know if this is necessary. We learned a little about, like, there's multiple ways to attack this. One is GitHub models and the Azure AI inference package. But then here was another package that was used, what's it called here? The MEAI.
Microsoft Extensions AI.
Which is, attempting to make it a little bit easier. So some of this is really just understanding everything that's under the hood.
Yeah. And it is something, I'll be honest, it's something I'm struggling with a little bit, because there are, depending on how you're looking at things. Are you looking at things from a service perspective, or are you looking at things from a coding perspective? And if you're looking from the service side, there's Azure AI inferences, and those SDKs. If you're looking at it from the coding side, it's Microsoft Extensions AI, it's semantic kernel, it's those things, how the code talks to the service. So I think I almost want to do a longer show where we go through each one of those and just kind of say, all right, we've got this. How do we use it? What is it for? And kind of,
and what's interesting
place, essentially,
is even as you continue in that blog post, which I think is a really neat post, is at the very end says, do I have to use GitHub models? And the answer is no. You could run it on Azure, or you could even run it. So this is new to me.
On a container, right?
Yes. And even that same repo provides examples. So it might be interesting to get those working. But I know you definitely have to head out. So
yeah,
we should get going here. Definitely want to thank everybody who joined us live, and appreciate the comments from YZZ, who definitely is on the right page there. So it should be very close.
Yes. Wonder if why ZZ is a Rush fan.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll find out in the comments.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So if you've had, success with this or advice, don't hesitate to leave us comments on YouTube.
Yep.
Or if there is something you'd like to see us try and tackle. I mean, certainly part of this is seeing to try to cut through some of the problems that anybody might have going live with this stuff where you're trying to translate from blog post to reality. So, but in the meantime, we do have to get going. So hopefully, if it's time for you for morning stand up, have a great Tuesday here in February already of 2025. And if that's it, Rich, then for Rich, I'm Chris, and we'll see you next time on the Dev Talk Show.